All right, not seeing anybody jump in yet. Okay, there we go. Hello, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. We're going to go ahead and get started in just a minute. We're going to give it about a minute before we get started just to allow everyone the chance to log in. So give us just a minute and we'll go ahead and get started. All right, I'm seeing the numbers taper off, so I think we can go ahead and get started with tonight's meeting. Once again, thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Saad Amir. I am a part of the Public Affairs Department here at MSD, and I'll be helping facilitate the conversation tonight. Thanks for joining us for a discussion on the Tulane-Wilbur Sanitary Relief Project, which we'll be discussing tonight, the project specifics and meeting the project team and answering some of your questions. One of the things that I want to point out on this slide is the project number 12239. If you ever have any questions and you want to reach out to someone on the project team, the quickest way to get them to the project so they can get the information you need is to provide them the project number. So please make note of that, 12239. That'll be the easiest way to get your questions answered. Okay, to start off tonight's meeting, we're going to start off with just a little bit of a roadmap, just so we're all on the same page of how tonight's going to go. We'll begin with a technology overview, just to make sure everybody's on the same page with the virtual platform and you know how to engage with us. We'll go over some ground rules with the questions there. That'll be a brief discussion, and then following that will be just an overview that I'll give over MSD, who we are, what we do, just to have a baseline understanding of what we do here. And then we'll move over into the project specifics. So we'll talk about the overview, the general goal, some of the specs, and then we'll move into restoration, some of the frequently asked questions that we have received so far, and a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. All right, so talking about the platform that we're on. So obviously you guys must have realized by now you're in what's called listen and view mode. And what that means is your mics are off and your videos are off. Now that does not mean we don't want to hear from you. There are different ways to engage with us on Zoom, but the main way that we're going to be focusing on is through the Q&A button. So if you're on a smartphone or a tablet, if you wiggle your mouse or if you tap your screen, you'll see a black menu bar appear at the bottom. One of the buttons on there is a Q&A button. If you tap or click on that Q&A button, you'll be able to see a chat box appear, a text box. You can type in your questions there and we'll receive them through that. Now, I did mention that we'll be having a Q&A session at the end of the presentation, but that does not mean you have to wait until the end of the presentation to ask your question. At any point throughout the presentation, if you have a question, something comes up, go ahead and hit that Q&A box, type in your question, and we'll receive it. A couple of things about that Q&A box. Everyone can see everyone else's question. So if you see a question on there that you also want to see answered, you'll see a thumbs up button underneath the question, and you can hit that thumbs up button, and that lets us know that more than one person wants that question answered, and that lets us know how to prioritize during the Q&A. Some ground rules on those questions. So we are only going to be addressing questions live during the meeting that have to do with the project and are general questions with the project. So if you have questions about one of our other services or billing or something not related to the project, we do want to hear those questions, and we'll ask you to just go ahead and type those into the into the Q&A box. And what will happen is you'll be private chatted by my colleague, Beth McCoy, who's also a part of the Public Affairs Department, who is going to be handling sort of the back end of the presentation tonight. And she'll go ahead and chat you and let you know we've gotten your information, we've got your question, and we'll be forwarding it to the correct department. Similarly, if you have a question about your specific property, how this project is going to address your specific property, just in the interest of everyone's time, we won't be addressing those live during the meeting, but we also do want to hear those questions. So go ahead and type those questions into the Q&A box. Beth will chat you, let you know we have your information from when you signed up, and we'll be forwarding your question to the project team for a one-on-one follow-up after the meeting. All right, I think that's it for the technology, so let's go into a brief discussion on MSD. I'm not going to read through all of these points. The couple of main things that I wanted to point out is just to make sure everyone understands that MSD is actually a government utility. We're not a private corporation. We're a provision of the state constitution of Missouri, voted into existence in 1954. We're governed by a 6-member board of trustees, 3 members who are appointed by the county executive, and 3 who are appointed by the city of St. Louis, the mayor of the city of St. Louis. A lot of people don't know this, but MSD is actually two utilities in one. We deal with wastewater, and wastewater is the water that comes from your dishwashers, your washing machines, your toilets, your sinks. All of that goes through your lateral into our main, and then is conveyed into one of our 7 treatment plants where it is cleaned and then released back into the environment. We also deal with stormwater. Stormwater is exactly what you think it is. It's rainwater that bounces off the roof of your house, down your driveway, along the curb, into one of our inlets. And because that's just rainwater, that is conveyed into the environment, one of the creeks, streams, or tributaries in the area. The reason why I want to mention that is because this project actually deals with 2 sides of that. Now, 95% of the project, and you'll see this when we talk about this in just a second, will deal with the wastewater side. But there is a small portion of this project that deals with the stormwater side as well. And we'll talk about that once we look at the maps. So the other big thing that I want to point on here is you'll see the stats for how many thousands of miles of sewers that we have. We have about almost 10,000 miles, and that leads us to be the 4th largest sewer system in the United States, behind LA, New York, and Chicago. And that really drives a lot of the cost for our program. But again, we'll be discussing mostly the wastewater side of this project, but we'll be delving in a little bit about the stormwater as well. Okay, so that's all the general. Now let's move into the actual project. So I'll be going ahead and letting Tracy Rogers introduce herself and some of the project team. Tracy is actually the MSD project manager for this project, and I'll let her introduce herself and some of the members on our project team. Tracy? Oh, you are muted. Always, it's all good. There you go.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, you're fine.
So, I'm Tracy Rogers. I have a team of inspectors that are on-site inspectors. They're out on all of our projects every day, not necessarily all day. The inspector for this project is going to be Steve Johnson. We have his information listed up there, his email and his phone number. So for the day-to-day, if you have questions, he will be your first contact because he is out there in the field and he can get to you quicker than I can. If you still have questions, then you are certainly welcome to email or call me. My email is trogers@stlmsd.com. My phone number is 335-2019. And then we have Tim Hicks, who is our resident inspector. And Tim works in the background, keeping paperwork flowing and helping me manage the project. And then if there's bigger issues on the project, then he will come out and meet up with Steve Johnson and help out there. Austin Markey is our project manager for the contractor. Luth Construction is our contractor. And Austin will have a superintendent and a foreman that will work on the project day to day. And then Austin's information is listed there also. And if you can't get an answer out in the field, and call Steve Johnson first and he'll deal with the contractor. But if you can't get an answer from Steve, then you're always welcome to call Austin also.
Perfect. Thank you, Tracy. Appreciate that. All right, and all this information, if you haven't had a chance to write it down or anything, we're going to be posting this recording on the website, and the last slide of this presentation includes all of this information as well. So let's go ahead and move forward. Okay, now let's talk about the project overview. So generally what we'll be doing with this project, the Tulane-Wilbur Sanitary Relief Project, is we'll be taking older, smaller pipe and we'll be replacing it with bigger, newer pipe. And the idea here is obviously to increase the capacity, how much flow can go through those pipes. One of the other big things that we'll be doing with this project is removing an overflow point. And so what is an overflow point? There are points in our system where if the sewers become overcharged, there's a relief point that releases untreated wastewater into our environment. And obviously that's not something that we want. We want to get rid of that overflow point. And because we're able to increase the capacity in this neighborhood, we're able to remove that relief point, that overflow point, which will be really, really helpful in cleaning up our waterways as well. Tracy, can you talk a little bit about some of the specs? How much pipe are we putting down? What's the depth here, the average size, diameter, that type of thing?
So we're going to put in about 5,000 feet of pipe. The average size is 10-inch to 27-inch pipe. There's a small portion of storm sewer pipe that's going to go in. And I'm sorry, I don't have the ratio of sanitary to storm. And like as you said, we're going to upsize the pipe. so that we have more capacity.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Tracy.
And as far as depth, when Austin talks about the project, he can get into the general depth of when he's talking about excavation.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. Thank you. Okay, and then just to talk about the benefits, they might seem apparent, but obviously by increasing that flow, the amount of flow the capacity that the pipes can handle, we'll be cleaning up the waterways, and it will reduce instances of the sewers becoming overcharged. There's too much flow going into them, and what that'll do is it'll alleviate basement backup. So it'll prevent that flow, that wastewater, from being backed up into your property, into your basement, into your business. So those are the general benefits as well. Okay, so let's talk about where this is going to be happening. And we'll hear from Austin a little bit here. So this is the wastewater side. As you can see, this is where the majority of the project is going to be. And this section, I'll go ahead and one thing that I want to point out here is you'll see the timeline right here where it says construction start and construction end. One thing that I do want to point out is this is our best estimate. Obviously, there are things that are outside of our control that could impact this timeline, weather or a global pandemic, to say. So for example, so there's a lot of things that we don't know that could happen in the future that could impact this timeline, but this is our best estimate as well. So Austin, if you wouldn't mind, could you explain, I know that there's going to be 2 phases for this wastewater side. Could you talk a little bit about where we're going to be starting and how we're going to be progressing through this alignment?
Yeah, sure. So where we're going to start at is at Kickapoo and Mohegan Drive there on the far south side of this area map. And then we're just going to work up north and follow that all the way up until we hit to Weber Road. And that's where the first phase ends. We can, per St. Louis County, we can't work on Weber Road during the school year. So from late August to earlier mid-May, we won't be working on Weber Road.
Perfect, that's great.
Once the summer starts, we're going to continue going on Weber Road and finishing the rest of the project on the sanitary side.
Perfect, awesome. And just to make sure people can orient themselves, this is Bayless High School, here's Bayless Elementary and Middle School, and then here's new Mount Sinai up here. And so in this general direction, this area, phase 1, we're going through, Austin, we're going through a lot of backyards, alleyways, front yards, driveways, that kind of thing for phase 1. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. And then through here on Weber, this is where the overflow point is that we'll be removing, right?
Correct.
Okay, perfect, awesome. Anything else that we want to mention for the wastewater side of this project?
I don't have anything.
Okay, great. Okay, so this is the wastewater side. And then moving a little bit northeast, this is the stormwater side. So I don't think I have the exact ratio either, but I believe it's between 500 and 600 feet, 500 and 700 feet of stormwater sewer that is being put in. And Austin, can you talk a little bit about how we'll be progressing through the stormwater side of this project?
Sure. So we're going to start at Heidelberg Avenue right there, and then we're going to work south, and then we are going to turn west, I guess northwest on that private alleyway, and then work our way, finish that section first, and then we're going to come back and tie in all these little manhole, the dots are manholes, and then we're going to continue heading east as we're tying in, and then finish that line right there.
Okay, perfect, awesome, thank you very much. And this, in general, I'm seeing the private roads. This is mainly alleyways, side yards, a little bit in front of the yards out here, but typically in a very residential area. Okay, all right. Okay, so just talking a little bit about previous public engagement that we've had on this project. So this shouldn't be the first time you're hearing about this project. At least it's not the first time that we've reached out about this project. So there's a couple of things that need to happen before an MSD project can get into the construction phase. And one of that is to go through the design process. And while the project is being designed, there's also a design public meeting that our engineering department does during the design phase. So that public meeting took place in October of 2019. We've obviously had to do a little bit of municipal and county coordination. Wilbur Park is the municipality that's in the area, and we do go through a bit of unincorporated as well. And of course, Austin mentioned that we do have to go through Weber Road, which is a county road, so that's obviously some coordination that we have to have with the county there. Of course, with the Bayless School District, we do have to coordinate with them. Obviously, we are going to be impacting parts of their property, so we made sure we included them in our discussions. And then if you go on our website, the webpage for this project, you'll see all of the postcards, the brochures, the letters that have been sent throughout these last couple of years explaining that there was a project on its way. And I believe there was like 6 postcards, letters, or brochures that were sent out. Okay, now let's get into the nitty-gritty, talking about how it's going to be built and how it's going to be affecting you as residents. So the majority of this project, actually all of this project, will be constructed through the open cut method. And what that means is we'll be digging through the surface of the ground. So there'll be trenches in the ground where we'll excavate the pipe and put in new pipe. And so let's talk a little bit about how that's going to impact the residents. So Austin, I think you might as well take this one too. Can you talk a little bit about the type of equipment some of the residents will be seeing throughout construction?
Sure. So we're going to have an excavator, a skid steer, and a large dump truck for the majority of the work. And for majority of this job, we're actually in your yards and we're not in the street blocking the entire street. We'll have one lane open at all times for residents and to get through. Then specifically when we go through your driveway, we will make sure we get through that driveway by the end of the day. It shouldn't take more than a couple hours for us to actually dig and lay that piece of pipe and backfill. And so you can get out of your driveway. And if you need to really get out, just let us know. Our guys are more than happy to just take a minute and let you out first before so you can do your errands. And I promise you, by the time you come back, it'll be backfilled and you won't even, and you guys can access your driveway.
Perfect. Yes, that's extremely important. If you do have those extenuating circumstances where you need to get out, just let the contractor know. They know that they're in your neighborhood, so they want to be working with you as much as they possibly can. So Austin touched a little bit about this too. Can we focus a little bit on the traffic impact here as well? I know you said that one lane of traffic will be open at all times. Of course, the construction, most of the construction, as you said, will be taking place in yards and driveways. But with the dump trucks going through, the vehicles going through, it's obviously going to be a little bit of an impact. Can you talk a little bit about that traffic control plan that we have in place?
So through the neighborhoods, we're not going to have a traffic control plan per se. We're going to have an extra guy out there watching traffic, making sure, hey, look, these people need to get through, let them get through, stop moving, just some generic things. We'll have construction ahead signs just to letting everyone else know they're driving through that might not exactly live in the neighborhood, to let them know what's going on. But for the most part, everyone is going to know what's going on in that street at that time. And we will keep our mess at a very minimum. MSD is really big on requiring that out of us. And we're going to put it back the way it was, and if not better.
They will change a bit when you get to the Weber Road portion, correct?
Yes, then we will actually have a very major traffic control plan, and that might not. There's going to be a reduction in lanes on that. I think have approval of reducing the entire sides of the street so we can actually work in the middle of the street. But that's only from till 3 p.m. and then we have to remove that traffic control. So every day by the end of 3:30, those lanes will be open again.
Okay, that's really important. Thanks for mentioning that. Okay, and we talked a little bit about the access issues here. So we'll be going through the driveways, the yards, things like that. I know you touched on this. I want to make sure we reiterate that we will be plating the trenches at the end of the day. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, awesome. So access issues, while they might be temporary, obviously we're going through yards to construct this project, so we do expect some access issues. But as Austin mentioned, the contractor here is willing to work with the residents in the neighborhood to make this as seamless as possible, as much as you can on a huge construction project. Austin, Tracy, anything else we want to mention on impacts for the residents?
There's going to be noise. There's going to be dust. People are surprised at the noise. So when you have heavy equipment out there, and especially going through yards, it's going to create noise. And So going in yards, it's a little less noisy, but the dust is gonna kick up, so just be prepared for that.
Perfect. Always a good reminder. Thank you, Tracy. Okay, so let's talk about what it's going to look like after it's done. Austin mentioned this MSD policy is to obviously follow all local ordinances, but our main thing is to leave the conditions better or at least the same as we found them. So a lot of this deals with some of the existing easements that have already been put in place. Tracy, do you want to talk a little bit about that? Restoration policies in general for this project based on easement negotiations and just generally what we do with sod and road restoration.
So if our right-of-way department came out and spoke with you and obtained an easement from you, then we have a homeowner agreement, and the homeowner agreements will certainly be abided by. Austin will make sure that happens, and I'll make sure that Austin makes sure. So, and then for existing easements, generally we either resod those or seed and straw them, depending upon where they are. We generally do not replace trees or bushes if we had an existing easement. Then sod will be replaced where there was sod, and again, if you have a homeowner agreement, it will be replaced with what was called out. And then as far as road restoration goes, we usually replace that in kind. So if it's an asphalt road, we'll replace with an asphalt road. If it's, sometimes we have a rigid base concrete that has an asphalt overlay. And then of course, St. Louis County will make sure that we put the roads back as they expect them to be. We have to make sure that the roads meet St. Louis County standards.
100%. Thanks, Tracy.
And you
All
were
right.
talking about, let me just mention the driveways. So we're concerned about their driveways. Driveways are replaced in kind, unless it's called out in an agreement.
Okay, perfect. Good to mention. Thank you, Tracy. All right. Okay, so that ends the informational part of the presentation. So at this point, we're going to be moving to the questions period. Before I get into these frequently asked questions, I want to remind everyone how to ask the questions. I see a couple already coming in, which is great. If you do have a question, just wiggle your mouse, tap on your screen. You'll see the Q&A button, and you can go ahead and type in your question there. I'll leave this one, Tracy. If you want to hand it off to Austin, just let me know. But we've gotten a couple of questions. How do I protect my dog fence, irrigation system, things like that?
Okay, so Luth will be sending out a notification letter when they're going to start construction. I believe it's 14 days in advance. So be looking for a letter from Luth. And then if you have a dog fence, an irrigation system, or anything like that, make sure that you call Luth when you get that notice so that they know that you have that. And then they'll Austin, you can jump in if you need to, but they'll call you, and then somebody will come by so that you can show them where your systems are at in the yard.
All right, Austin, anything to add?
Yes. So please be sure to tell us where your dog fence irrigation systems are. This happens more often than not. Someone doesn't tell us, and then all of a sudden we're excavating through and had no idea. No one told us anything, and that doesn't get marked by any public entity to say, hey, look, there's a dog fence or irrigation system there. That's a private system that is the property owner, and I mean, we'll fix it. I mean, if we do damage it, it's going to get fixed, but it would just help us out to not have to replace anything if we're just told, hey, look, it's right here in this area. We will hand dig it. We will vac it. We will do everything we can to protect that piece.
Perfect. Thank you very much to the both of you. All right, so will this project affect sewer service or any other utilities?
That's not anticipated at all. And if something came up, just say when they're digging, something comes up with somebody's lateral or something, Austin's foreman will go knock on the front door and let them know that, hey, for the next, hour or whatever, please try not to flush your toilets because we're working on your lateral. But it
Right.
shouldn't affect their service.
Right. And so you're talking about when the laterals are connected to the new pipe, the new
Correct.
main. Okay.
And then as far as
Perfect.
the other utilities go, we don't anticipate any interruption for any of the other utilities.
Okay. Perfect. Awesome. Thank you very much. All right. Let's move on to your guys' questions as well. So I've gotten a couple as well. Here's the contact information that I mentioned was going to be on the page. And then remember that you can always look up more information about this project, look at those maps. The PowerPoint here is going to be posted on here in a recording as well after this meeting. Will be posted on this webpage on the MSD website, /Tulane12239. So let's go ahead and take your questions. I'll go ahead and read these off. Okay. Elizabeth asks, the overflow point will be removed. If by some freak accident of nature or man, what will happen if the larger pipe overflows?
Our intent, that's why we're removing the overflow so that, and I'm not positive, but I think the overflow is a manhole. So by putting in a bigger pipe, Austin, you have to, I'm not positive if we're putting a new manhole there or if we're just replacing that manhole with bigger pipe. But we do flow monitoring. And so that's how they decided what size pipe to put on this project. So they put flow monitors in the sewer to see how much flow actually goes through there, which told us that we needed bigger sewers. And putting the bigger pipe in will prevent that from overflowing. So unless the neighborhood builds up really big, then we should be fine.
Yes. And of course, any of those can be just directed. If you have any of those instances, you can always call MSD's 24/7 customer service line to report that as well. And that's at 768-6260. All right, Mark is asking, what type of sod do you use?
Austin?
Okay, we use, depends on what the yard was, typically bluegrass, but if the homeowner agreement does state fescue or zoysia, we will put fescue or zoysia in there. We get our grass from Keevan Brothers Sod Farm. If that's more specific what you're asking for, but that's just how we do it. We put the sod back as it is, as in kind as is.
All right.
We don't try to mix bluegrass with fescue or zoysia with fescue. It's what was there is what we put back.
Awesome. Thank you very much on that. And sod replacement, it really is dependent on weather and things like that as well. So restoration, at that point of restoration, really just depends on what time of year it's at and when you can really actually put down the sod. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, that's what I thought as well. Okay. All right, Myron asks, Bayless recently completed a drive aisle west of the gym. What impact will Tulane-Wilbur have on that, on the drive aisle?
So I'm assuming that's the brand new where they put the rain garden and stuff in. Is that what she's talking about?
I think she's talking about the temporary pavement that we have to replace. That's right next to the gym, not exactly the parking lot, but the access road, which we will be replacing in full.
With permanent.
Yes, with permanent. Right now it's temporary.
Okay,
just rocking a little bit of asphalt over it. It's not a permanent solution right now for Bayless School District.
Okay, perfect.
Now, outside, is she asking if it's going to affect their access to the school?
Okay. Myron, if you would like to clarify on that, are you asking about access issues for the school? I'll give you a second to type it in. Okay. Not seeing anything directly, so we may have to follow up
Okay.
on that as well. Oh, asking about the effect on my property. Okay, so yes, we will have to follow up specifically with Myron on this because it is a specific property question as well.
Okay.
All right, perfect. Okay, so I'm not seeing any open questions at this point. So we'll give it just a second, just as a reminder. This meeting is being recorded and it will be posted on the project webpage at msdprojectclear.org/Tulane12239. Of course, if you have any questions that you were not able to ask tonight or you think about it later, feel free to reach out to any of the people on the screen here and you can email them and ask those questions and they'll follow up with you accordingly. Okay, I am not seeing any more questions, so we appreciate your guys' time. Huge thank you to our experts, Tracy and Austin, and the rest of the project team for being here and answering any of the questions. We appreciate your guys' time, and we hope you have a great rest of your night. Thank you very much, everybody.